Hey Tigers! Our book today is called Chester's Way. This is written and illustrated by Kevin Henkes. This is also read with permission from Harper children's book. Excuse me, I have the hiccups today. I read the last time Chrysanthemum, which is also a book by Kevin Henkes. So I want you guys to kind of think a little bit about how they're similar, because a lot of his books, almost all of his books, have some similarities between them. And actually they're kind of all in the same world, because they actually, some of the kids from some of the other books show up in the different books. So it's kind of interesting to look for. Okay, this is Chester's Way. Today we're going to think about the author's message, and we're also going to compare and contrast the main characters. Chester had his own way of doing things. There's a little speech bubble up here. It says, "Hello, my name is Chester. I like croquet and peanut butter and making my bed." He likes to make his bed. He always cut his sandwiches diagonally, which is like across that way. He always got out of bed on the same side, and he never left the house without double knotting his shoes. Chester always had the same thing for breakfast, toast with jam and peanut butter, and he always carried a miniature first aid kit in his back pocket just in case. Excuse me. "You definitely have a mind of your own," said Chester's mother. "That's one way to put it," said Chester's father. So Chester likes to play croquet. Here's a first aid kit. Chester's best friend Wilson was exactly the same way. That's why they were best friends. Chester wouldn't play baseball unless Wilson played. They never swung at the first pitch or slid head first. Wilson didn't ride his bike unless Chester wanted to, and they always used hand signals. If Chester was hungry, Wilson was hungry too, but they rarely ate between meals. "Some days I can't tell those two apart," said Wilson's mother. "Me neither," said Wilson's father. Chester and Wilson, Wilson and Chester. That's the way it was. So they're the same. So we can't really contrast those two because they're the same, but we're going to meet a new character soon, and we're going to compare Chester and Wilson to the new character. They loved to go on picnics. Once Wilson accidentally swallowed a watermelon seed and cried because he was afraid that the watermelon plant would grow inside of him. Chester swallowed one too. "Don't worry," said Chester. "Now if you grow watermelon plants, I'll grow one too." That's a good friend right there. Chester duplicated his Christmas list every year and gave a copy to Wilson because they always wanted the same things anyway. For Halloween, they always dressed as things that went together. Salt and pepper shakers, 2 mittens on a string, ham and eggs. "There really are 2 peas in a pod," said Chester's mother. "Looks like it," said Chester's father. In spring, Chester and Wilson shared the same umbrella. In winter, they never threw snowballs at each other. In the fall, they raked leaves together. And in summer, they reminded each other to wear sunscreen so they wouldn't burn. Chester and Wilson, Wilson and Chester. That's the way it was. And then Lily moved to the neighborhood. Lily had her own way of doing things. Her little speech bubbles right here says, "I'm Lily, I'm the queen, I like everything." So we're going to compare and contrast Lily to our other characters. How she's the same and how she's different. She wore band-aids all over her arms and legs to look brave. She talked backward to herself sometimes so no one would know what she was saying. And she never left the house without one of her nifty disguises. Lily waved at all the cars that passed by, even if she didn't know who was in them. And she always carried a loaded squirt gun in her back pocket just in case. So Wilson and Chester carried band-aids in their back pocket, a first aid kit. She carries a squirt gun. Does that tell us anything about our characters? "She definitely has a mind of her own," said Chester. "That's one way to put it," said Wilson. Okay, so now that Wilson and Chester like to play croquet, they carry a first aid kit. They don't wear band-aids. They double knot their shoes. They cut their sandwiches diagonally. They're both boys. Lily's a lot different. She does not play croquet. She carries that squirt gun in her pocket. She wears all sorts of band-aids. She doesn't double knot her shoes. She's a girl. Lots of differences. Lots of differences. When Lily asked Chester and Wilson to play, they always said they were busy. When she called them up on the phone, they disguised their voices and said they weren't home. They're not being very kind to her. If Lily was walking on one side of the street, Chester and Wilson would cross to the other side and hide. She's something else, said Chester. Looks like it, said Wilson. So we've talked a lot about things that they do that's different or the same, but I want you guys to be thinking about, well, think about what else they do that's the same, but also think about their character traits, how they act or feel. One day, while Chester and Wilson were practicing their hand signals, some older boys rode by, popping wheelies. They circled Chester and Wilson and yelled personal remarks. Chester and Wilson didn't know what to do. Just when they were about to give up hope, a fierce-looking cat with horrible fangs jumped out of the bushes and frightened the boys away. Was it really a cat? That was Lily, wasn't it? Are you who I think you are? Chester asked the cat. Of course, the cat replied. Thank you, Lily, said Chester. You're welcome, Chester, said Lily. Thank you, Lily, said Wilson. You're welcome, Wilson, said Lily. I'm glad you were wearing a disguise, said Chester. I'm glad you had your squirt gun, said Wilson. I always do, said Lily, just in case. It's funny because the boys keep their first aid kit in their back pocket just in case, and she keeps a squirt gun just in case. So they all keep something just in case in their back pocket. That squirt gun came in handy too, so whatever they're keeping must have come in handy. Afterward, Chester invited Lily over for lunch. You have a muscle mouse cup, said Lily. Of course, said Chester. I do too, said Lily. Same here, said Wilson. Chester and Wilson cut their sandwiches diagonally. Lily asked Chester's mother if she had a cookie cutter, and she made stars and bells and flowers. That's neat, said Chester. Wow, said Wilson. Did you see what she did? She had them cut into shapes. That's cool. That night, Lily invited Chester and Wilson to sleep over. You have a nightlight? Said Chester. Of course, said Lily. I do too, said Chester. Same here, said Wilson. So that's something that makes them similar. They all have nightlights. Chester and Wilson wanted toast and jam and peanut butter for breakfast the next morning. Boring, said Lily. Try this instead. Oh, this is good, said Chester. Wow, said Wilson. They all have nightlights. They keep something special in their back pocket. They all have those cups. They all have their way of doing things. So they actually do have some similarities. After that, when Lily asked Chester and Wilson to play, they said yes. When she called them up on the phone, they had pleasant conversations. And if Lily was walking on one side of the street, Chester and Wilson waved and ran to catch up with her. Chester and Wilson taught Lily hand signals, and she taught them how to pop wheelies. Lily taught Chester and Wilson how to talk backwards, and they taught her how to double knot shoes. Some days I just can't tell those three apart, said Lily's mother. Me neither, said Lily's father. Chester and Wilson and Lily. Lily and Wilson and Chester. That's the way it was. For Halloween, they dressed as the three blind mice. For Christmas, Lily gave Chester and Wilson nifty disguises, and they gave her a box of multicolored shoelaces, extra long for double knotting. They loved to go on picnics. When Chester and Wilson told Lily about how they each had swallowed a watermelon seed once, Lily swallowed 3 of them. I'll grow a plant for each of us, she said. They all act differently, but kind of similarly at the same time. They're being themselves, aren't they? In spring, Chester and Wilson and Lily shared the same umbrella. In winter, they never threw snowballs at each other. In fall, they raked leaves together. And in summer, they reminded each other to wear sunscreen so they wouldn't burn. Chester and Wilson and Lily. Lily and Wilson and Chester. That's the way it was. And then Victor moved to the neighborhood. Predict what will happen next. This is the end of the book. But what do you think could happen after this? Do you think they're not going to get along with Victor? So think about Kevin Henkes' books. Notice that they all have characters that are all mice. And oftentimes the characters in one book will show up in another book. It's kind of a background character, which is kind of cool. Okay, I want you guys to think about what the author wants us to learn in this text. The author's message, the moral, the lesson. So they all are trying to be themselves, and it's okay to be yourself. So I think the author is trying to teach us to be ourselves, and it's okay to be yourself. All right, I'll see you guys next time.